thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here to share my story with you. So my talk is called Learning to See. And as was denoted, I did not grow up over here. I grew up in False Creek as part of the new False Creek Cooperative Housing Association. So this was sort of a reimagining of South False Creek, if you're unfamiliar with the area, with cooperative housing and various types of housing implemented. What is amazing is that it has community built right into its structure. So you can see one of the complexes being built there. It's built circular, so there's space on the inside. The whole area was conceived with walkways and pathways so that you would bump into your neighbors. It was a fantastic place to grow up. So it didn't only have community in the structure, but it also had community within the way it ran, its organization. So it's not a form of rental housing, as some people might think. It is a form of home ownership. So together as members, we own the space. And because of that, we have to take accountability for it, and we're part of creating it. So you can be part of the newsletter team that puts together the newsletter. You can be part of the gardening committee, the finance committee. But we need people to be involved in order to make things happen. So it was an intensely playful place. So this is friends and I in the center of the co-op. There was always people to run out and play dress up or whatever you want with you. So it was very playful, cooperative, collaborative. During this time, so in the early 80s, my grandfather, Bill Johnston, seen there in the photo, had a desire to be closer to nature. So he was a hunter, a fisherman. He wanted to move from Vancouver over to West Van. So this was actually an ad for the piece of property that they ended up buying. I really enjoy it because it says the property is worth $70,000, and the median household income in 1980 was $41,000 a year. So like not that different, but they built the house and they have enjoyed living in it for many, many years. And for me, as possibly, the grandparent-grandchild relationship, they were always giving us a ton of attention and gifts, that this place also represented a ton of abundance and independence for me. Their house, pictured here on the right, is very separate from other homes, right? I grew up in the co-op housing on the left, where we're living right beside our neighbors. So in my mind, going back and forth between these places, they were very different. I couldn't recognize what community looked like over here because it was so obvious from where I was growing up. So in 2014, I got married, but about a month and a half later, my grandfather passed away. So myself and my new husband moved into the West Vancouver home with my grandmother so that she could live in place. So this began a real exploration of what West Van was, mostly probably because I have a faithful companion, Sierra, pictured there, forcing me to explore more and more. So many of these places are probably places you've enjoyed growing up, or if you're new, maybe places you're exploring as well. It was fantastic to slowly discover them. What I found really kind of neat was how the secrets of West Van that people who grew up here keep close to their hearts, as how they started becoming shared with me. North Shore rescue people may say something different. My strategy sometimes was just to follow my dog. I would time it, so never more than 20 minutes out in one direction, 20 minutes back. Neighbors would sort of, as they see you out walking, would share their favorite trails to go on. Sometimes just trying to connect walks and discovering there's all those fantastic walkways in between communities that are there. Lastly, also learning to see trails. So particularly in the winter when the snow falls and you can actually see somebody's footprints heading off into what you didn't know was a trail before. So the trail is becoming more obvious seasonally. That leads me to birding. So being outside here in this wonderful wilderness and old growth forest made me want to understand the area more. So I'm a geneticist by training. We deal with very small molecules in clear liquid all the time. So being able to see and touch things and explore things was pretty new and fantastic. At this point in my life, I was juggling a couple jobs, volunteer work, helping my grandmother through this transition. So being able to do something that required you to kind of totally get out of your head and just focus on something else, something fleeting, which takes all of your attention, was really fantastic. I love that it's something that you can practice without buying a whole bunch of fancy equipment. Like you can, for sure, but you don't need a ton of fancy equipment. And you can practice it anywhere, anytime. It also is an activity that has a long history of conservation, promoting community through annual bird counts, and of course citizen science, and what scientists wouldn't like a bunch of data. I'm very thankful to the Lighthouse Park Preservation Society for introducing me to birding. So it was seeing an ad for the monthly bird counts that got me out. This is a picture of us down on Shore Pine Point, where we set up a scope and have a look over at grebe islets to look for shorebirds. It was through this community that I really got to explore what birding was. And it was where I found a community that I recognized. So these were people that were working towards a shared goal that made use of everybody's diverse skills, and that people who were just really grateful for any amount of contribution. So if it was a newcomer coming out to a bird count, that they were very patient as I learned to distinguish a squirrel from a bird, which is sometimes all you can do. Being able to sort of spot a bird and then get the binoculars up without losing it, also a skill. And it's been fantastic to work alongside them. So Lighthouse Park has a few main goals. So one is educational, and they achieve this through creating fantastic newsletters, of which there's a few in the back, as well as informative talks, which you may have come to in this same room. There's also a component of protecting the natural integrity of both the park and surrounding areas, which, are fantastic activities to be involved with. So this sort of comes to, why do I enjoy doing this work? I wasn't quite sure if I would like birding, if this was something that I would continue with, and it really has struck a chord with me for two main reasons, and they're kind of selfish perhaps, but I think that's okay. So the first is special permission. So Lighthouse Park, beautiful place, old growth, please do not trample through the bushes. As being a park steward, you get this special permission to go off trail a little bit. And that's fantastic. So also walking with my dog very quickly with a 5-foot nose up here, you experience the park in one way. On your hands and knees pulling ivy, you experience the park in a completely different kinesthetic way. I didn't know ivy has a smell until you're pulling it from the earth. The feel and the smell of the mud and the roots in there. Again, totally different experience of the park. A second point where we have special permission is that during our monthly bird counts, and you too can join us, we go down to the actual lighthouse. And this is a fantastic space that generally doubles our species count numbers because it is quiet, it is warm down there generally. And I feel like this sort of reciprocity, that you take care of it and it shares more of itself with you, is a beautiful relationship to be in. So the second reason I enjoy stewardship is learning to see. So as a scientist turned science educator, I am continuously thinking of, how do we prime minds to become great scientists? How do we prepare people to make discoveries? And I think it really is learning how to see what's in front of you. So this is a foxglove that I probably would have walked by without noticing, but walked by it and went, that looks different. And now I had a community of people to take a photo and send a photo to ask if anybody knew what it was. So it's that community that creates learning, that you're learning together, you're learning from them, you're learning how to look at things. I work with a lot of youth. They are needing this. They would desire this. They desire mentorship. They desire opportunities to explore and that community to learn with. So the Environmental Science Academy that was mentioned, and the kids involved in that will be giving talks here over the coming couple of weeks, I believe. There's a brochure in the back. They're integrating with scientists in the community groups to learn that this is something that adults take seriously. This is something that they can do as jobs. At Future Science Leaders that I work with at Science World, again, we're creating communities of people who can learn together, because that's a great way that we learn. So I am, in the end, entirely embarrassed of my preconceptions of what West Vancouver was. I naively could not see something that was in front of me because it just didn't look like what I recognized. So there is an amazing amount of community here, and sometimes you just need to learn how to see it. Thank you.
Dave and I grew up in the Lynn Valley area in the 30s and 1940s. Now during this time, we'll all recall, it was World War II. Rationing was in place. Most of the major food items were rationed, therefore pretty near everyone had a victory garden. Now what did we learn from a victory garden? The miracle of seeds. You could put a little seed in the ground, and soon thereafter you could actually harvest a carrot, an onion, a radish. So that was the lesson that we learned. We learned a lot of things by observation. We also had chores relative to the garden. That kept us busy. We walked to school a mile each way. Now during that walk, on all 4 seasons, you'll learn to recognize certain things. The buds in the trees in the spring, which later became the fruit that you enjoyed in the summer and the fall. Sometimes in your yard, sometimes in other people's yards. The primary forms of transportation on the North Shore in those days was either the streetcar, the ferries that connected the North and West Vancouver, and cycling. A few people had cars, but gas was rationed, so that sort of limited that. There were no lifts up Hollyburn Mountain, or Grouse, or Seymour. If you wanted to go up, you hiked up. Grouse Mountain had a toll road. People had to pay for that, so you'd hike up anyway. If you're busy and keen, you got a paper route. That gave you some money. Then you can get a bicycle. That was an accomplishment. By exploring the mountains around Lynn Valley and later westward to Grouse and Hollyburn, you learned a great deal about the outdoors without thinking about learning. You just simply realized that that tree, that stump, that creek is the turning point to go left, right, south, or north. So the one requirement, get home for dinner. Your parents didn't tell you where to go. You just went and explored our playground, which was the North Shore Mountains. Taking risks such as jumping into Lynn Canyon, different levels, different sense of accomplishment, overcoming the fear of darkness, which we all know now is the absence of light, but at certain stages of your life, everyone was afraid of the dark. Learning outdoor safety, learning to avoid the animals, because some animals weren't friendly. School sports gave us the competitive edge to get involved, get excited, and really seriously compete. All of these things got us to the realization that we could do whatever we wanted if we put our mind to it. That was a good thing, including learning to swim. Jumping in the canyon and not learning to swim had a problem. Interesting sidelight, when you're picking blueberries on the mountainside, if the bushes are really shaking, maybe you ought to think about the fact that the bears are also harvesting the blueberries. Maybe it's time to move on. Now, joining the Boy Scouts was a big change for us. The Boy Scouts gave us wonderful experiences, great training in bushcrafts, survival skills, learning required discipline to become a King Scout, and leadership, all the while understanding the role and the motto, be prepared and be willing to help others. Little did we know that a few years later, that knowledge and ability put us in a position where we could give back to the North Shore community. In 1965, there was an ad in the North Shore Shopper. It said, young men needed to train in civil defense. Dave and I, along with 10 others, responded to the police office to see what was this all about. Little did we know that this would change our entire subsequent life. The training initially was for nuclear attack, earthquakes, fires, flood, heavy rescue, and some auto extraction courses. and first aid. During the next 3 years, we pursued these training activities and had the occasional call from police and fire to assist in fires and auto extraction and some rescues and a few recoveries. Our first major call was in 1968. A young person had fallen off the north face of Goat Mountain. Goat Mountain is 2 mountains behind Grouse Mountain. It's a very serious precipitous face. Quickly we realized as we went in there that our training thus far for nuclear attack, earthquake, and fire wasn't doing the trick. 3 days later, with the considerable assistance and leadership of Carl Winter, a friend from the Alpine Club, 442 Squadron helicopter, 3 days later, we got the body off the mountain. This made us realize that we have to change the focus of our training and the skill level required to meet the changing community needs. Interestingly, the Tuesday night trainings that took place at the beginning in 1965 continues to this day. 10 months of the year, the team trains every Tuesday night. Rain or shine, don't care when, don't care where, you will be training. Over our 53-year history, the team has done many interesting and wonderful rescues and many leadership roles in different aspects of search and rescue. Dave will speak more of that later. Interestingly, 25% of the calls we currently carry out are looking after tourists who come to enjoy our outdoors. We sincerely believe, always have, that we all have an obligation to give back to our community. We have chosen this way to give to our community. Enjoy the outdoors safely, and we're here to help and look after you if you get in trouble. Thank you. The situation was grandfather, Bud Reichman, and his grandson are hiking the House on Crest Trail, Cypress Bowl to the Lions. The kid is following Grandpa. So he doesn't know where he's going, he's just following Grandpa. Well, suddenly Grandpa slips off and falls to the west side of the House on Crest Trail into a very steep gully system, badly injured. Finally, the kid gets down to Grandpa, and by the time he got down there, I won't describe the detail, but the kid surmised that his Grandpa was dead because he was non-responsive, covered in blood and all kinds of bad things. The kid had a CB radio with him. He hiked out of the hole as far as he could on a face that was the south-facing face of that gully and started calling for help. Well, CB radios and kids calling for help is a notorious problem for kids just simply fooling around. In this case, the guy at Seashell heard this continuous call for help and realized this kid's not trying to fool around. He's trying his best to get someone to listen. So that got West Van PD involved because the guy from Horseshoe Bay also picked this call up. Now, House on Crest Trail is, if you haven't been on it, it's a wonderful hike, but it's a long hike. And if you had 50 people or 100 people to search that area to find where this guy had fallen, you'd probably spend the whole day looking and trying. Anyway, so we now have hit the evening period and darkness has fallen. The kid is sure his grandpa's dead, but we want to get this kid out of there.
How old is he?
I don't know, 7, 9, he was very young. One of the guys on the rescue team, a guy named Bert Batt, came up with the idea, why don't we grab the BC ferry, lock it in the dock, the kid's on his CB radio, and we'll get the bearing off the light, and we'll increase the angle off the horizon until the light is most intense. When the kid says, that's it, then we can calculate which gully this person could be.
Oh my God.
So at 5 in the morning, we got 2 machines. I got a paramedic in one machine. I'm in another machine spotting. 442's on its way in. And Reichman, by this time not dead, raised his hand with a stick in it. So I thought, Christ, he's alive too. So we got in and hoisted the guy out. But the whole thing came around to the idea of using the ferry and the light and the bearing and all that stuff to find the person. So that was Bert Batt. Too bad he's not alive anymore, but it was a good idea while he was with us. Simply that, remember, if a person goes missing, it's usually the end of the day. So now we're reluctant to call because we think that the person's been a Boy Scout, they know the area, etc., etc. So you sort of ad-lib your way into the middle of the night. You're not sleeping well, you're kind of really anxious, but you're not going to phone anyone because it could cost you something. Now, during that time, the person who was injured, remember the rule of first aid, the golden hour, treatment begins, recovery is much shorter. Now, if the person dies, how did you feel you didn't phone until we go out and find the body in the morning? So now we're going to pay for the psychological treatment you're going to require to try to get over this thing that you should have, could have done. And the worst thing to us is we use signs and symptoms to find people, which are trampled by subsequent park users, by rainfall, snow conditions, whatever happens. So the sooner we can get to the call and start looking at the clues and signs that we would use to find the person, the better off that person is, and the much more safe it is for us. And another very important aspect, as volunteers, asking people to take the day off work to go look for someone who could have been searched for during the night. It's just plain stupid. We've all worked all night and come home, have a shower, go to work, not even think about it. But the sooner you get onto it, and we had a major specialist, a spinal specialist, saying that the sooner you can get that person with a hematoma in the spinal column, the sooner that treatment starts. They don't end out in 15 months in GF Strong. It all backs up to the decision, like the fire department. Smell smoke, phone fire. Missing person, phone the police. They'll sort out what has to happen. We had support from our wives. And I'm not talking about support and saying, go get them. No, I'm talking about the phone calls, the hours, looking after everything, because we're gone. We're gone for days sometimes. So somebody has to step up and do all of those things that normally the couple would do. But they're doing it because you're not there. So there's a significant contribution besides just being, quote, supportive. So, Beverly and Margaret and Mary, congratulations. If you are interested in going hiking and you don't know where you're going to go, don't know what level of strenuous undertaking you're getting into, North Shore Hikers, and I don't own them, I used to guide trips for them, but they're safe. After 50-odd years I've been involved with them off and on. I think we've had about 4 calls generated because of some misadventure in the hike. But it's a group hike, 3 different levels, every weekend, meet point, get together, away you go. And it's properly led, safely led, and you get home and you experience places you would never even think to go and enjoy. If you ever want to have a magic moment, you spend all night searching for someone. And on the radio, finally, at some point in the middle of the night, you hear someone's found them. So Carl and I, or whoever, we're somewhere on the top of this peak, and then slowly the sun begins to rise. And the millions of diamonds, which is in fact the snow, and those rays of light that you can see the world as the light comes on the snow. That's a gift you can't buy, you have to be there. When you experience that, it's an incentive to do it again. When Gerry and I volunteered to use our knowledge of the North Shore and what we had learned as Boy Scouts and transfer that to search and rescue, we didn't realize the search and rescue was in a developmental role. That increased our volunteer time tremendously. What needed to be developed? Well, there are many things. Let me just mention a couple of them. One is the sound that is needed to attract a lost person. And what sound does the lost person need to give back to the searcher? So, is it just yelling, Laura, search and rescue here, and then you turn, do the same thing, listen, 360 degrees. There's got to be another way of doing this because you become hoarse. A man by the name of Martin Caldwell stepped up to the challenge and said, we're going to do a sound sweep. Got some students from the engineering department of UBC and a lot of volunteers went up to Hollyburn, and they had placed in the woods a number of devices that actually were emitting sounds that we were to listen to and report on what did we hear. And there were things that we were required to do in terms of giving sound. After 3 days, we think we had exhausted all of the sound opportunities that were available. The engineering students took the data, went back to their studies, and then came back to us and said that all sounds, such, I'm just reading from it, all sounds such as loud hailers, air horns, yelling, whistling, bear bangers, bear bells, all had value. However, the sound from the whistle gave best results. Plus, it's most likely an item that everybody will carry with them. The research also confirmed that voice is a limited availability. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Fox 40. That sharp, crystal clear sound is the whistle that has been adopted by the Adventure Smart program. And if I had enough of them, I would hand them out tonight, but I will do something about getting them to people if we have the names. So, enjoying the outdoors safely, Gerry spoke about that. Every day, a lot of people do that. And unfortunately, every day, a lot of people do not do that. That was a concern of ours because it increased our call volume. So we have to ask the question, does the public need education on how to enjoy the outdoors safely? The resounding answer was absolutely yes. So in 1970, because of the continual increase in call-outs, the Search and Rescue Advisory Committee and the Provincial Emergency Program created the Adventure Smart program that was aimed in giving to everyone knowledge, skills, ability to enjoy the outdoors safely. That program is now the best program in Canada, and it's also used internationally under license. The other program that is very important to small children, Lisa happened to mention it, and I'm going to use it in a different context. Hug a Tree and Survive. Two North Shore rescue people, Ken Hopkinson and Ross Peterson, found a program in California, brought it into Canada, into North Shore, adapted it, and delivered it to 7,000 children. And that program was to teach children to befriend a tree, hug a tree, make that tree your place to stay. Do not be running around and wait for search and rescue. There is another program that was made available through the owner of Cypress Mountain, and he allowed one of his employees, young employee if I may add, to deliver the Snow Smart program. And that again is to teach children to stay within the boundaries. He was so successful, they had more sessions with the North and West Vancouver School District that they could handle. Public education continues to be one of our major focuses. Now, has search and rescue changed in the last little while? You bet. It has gone from search and rescue to rescue. What am I referring to? Today, with the personal locator beacons, which are devices that you can buy and are registered, where you actually press a button, sends a signal to the satellite, goes to Trenton, and then it's distributed to whatever area in Canada where should be a response. And cell telephones. Now, a lost and injured person can call 911 or send a signal. The search and rescue manager then can almost get an exact location. So in the past, where we had to go search, then rescue, because the location is known, we now have a search. Add to that air support. What am I talking about? I'm talking about using a helicopter that has a rescuer attached to the helicopter on a cable underneath the helicopter. Knowing the location, the rescuer and helicopter go to that location, they do their assessment of the subject, the packaging if necessary, clip them onto the harness, and underneath the helicopter they then go and drop off at the next safest location. That has saved us from having to conduct a search. Think about it, and maybe you don't know this, but every search that we had took at least 10 to 12 hours, if not days. So now with rescue, it's over within a couple of hours, maybe 4 at the most. What other changes are coming? In Vancouver right now, in a hangar, Talon Helicopters has a new helicopter that is IFR rated, meaning it can fly at night. They also have just been approved to wear night vision goggles, pilot and spotters. They now can search at night. They can also rescue at night. The hoist is on the exterior. The rescuer is on the inside. He clips in, the hoist swings out, he's lowered down, does exactly the same thing as the other evolution is about in rescuing people. There's another change coming, and Gerry and I were looking at this a while ago, and that is the use of drones. In the United States, with an operator, they have been able to test a drone that will lock in on a signal. It will actually go to that spot with a rescue kit. The camera's included in the drone. It's taking a picture of everything it's seeing on the way in, looking at the condition of the subjects, dropping off the rescue kit, transferring that information back to the search and rescue base. That's the next thing we're going to see. Reducing time for saving lives is something that we always keep up here. How do we do that? So you're going to see a number of other changes. Funding for SAR. Laura asked me to mention this. The other day you saw the provincial government had mentioned that they have allotted $18 million for Dave and Gerry. No, sorry, $18 million for search and rescue in the province. There's 83 SAR groups. So it's going to be divided amongst them on a needs analysis basis. I'd like to say that we're very grateful. I will say we're very grateful. But any donation from the public, the search and rescue groups still appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing Gerry and I to give you a snippet of our life from two yappers and to share with you some of the things that we like to do. I want to take an opportunity here and recognize Carl Winter. And I'd like Carl to stand up. He is the third person to be a founding member of North Shore Rescue. Carl, well done. Thank you very much.
Could you please comment on the issue that comes up regularly in the media that people who are rescued should be paying something.
I have never met in my 50 years, and Gerry will probably agree, anybody who gets up in the morning and said, I'm going out and I'm going to get lost today and I'm going to get injured. And I don't care because there's no charge. The other thing that is important is that if we were to do a charge, we should have legislation that gives us that authority. BC Parks has that for disobeying a park sign. Now, Gerry and I happen to be on a search in Monarch Glacier. The helicopter bill for the first 10 days was $96,000. Now, if I turn around and say to you, ma'am, I didn't find your son or daughter, but by the way, here's a bill for $96,000. Step up. Well, we don't have that. You don't have that capability. You can go and mortgage your home. So that would put you on the social safety net. Now, there's also the theory, and Gerry and I differ in opinion on this one, that if there was a charge, people would say, is my daughter missing? I'll try and find it myself. That $500 that I'm going to have to spend, I'll wait a day or two. Maybe she'll come home. No, I don't think, and I haven't found a case that that would ever happen. But the theory is still there.
Hello everybody, thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell my story. So I've compiled a collection of photos that I hope will evoke the same feelings for you that they do for me. Being in nature is much more than a visual experience. It involves all the senses. So in viewing these scenes, try and smell the salty beach and cool forest air, feel the warmth of the sun and the fresh breeze, and imagine being immersed in the solace of the natural environment. I grew up in the Whitecliff area of West Vancouver. This photo was taken by my mom, who thought it would be fun to take pictures of me hugging a tree. Little did I know at the time that I would become an actual tree hugger in my later years. My childhood spent outdoors on the beaches and in the parks of West Van contributed largely to my love of nature and my desire to protect it. This photo is looking down over Cliff Cove, my childhood home for most of the 1970s. The Whitecliff Peninsula is a quiet residential enclave with an abundance of forested areas and parklands. This bluff between Cliff Cove and Copper Cove is a favorite hiking spot of mine. When one emerges from the trail leading here, there is a distinctive warmth and dryness in the air that you can smell, and you can smell the mosses growing on the rocks. Here's the beach at Cliff Cove, which was literally my backyard. As a child, I spent much of my time combing the beach, swimming, and messing about in boats. And this is Cliff Cove again facing east. Many a summer's evening was spent in the neighborhood with kids paddling around on logs in the cove. And this is Copper Cove between Cliff Cove and Horseshoe Bay. I've called this neighborhood my home since the early 1990s. And this is Copper Cove facing east. I've often marveled that despite the area's close proximity to a major urban center, one can often have this whole beach to oneself. At Copper Cove, I've been able to give my own children the same outdoor experiences that I enjoyed as a child. Whitecliff Park has been a favorite destination for myself as a child and as a mom with my own children. This is the view from the lookout facing north towards Bowen, Gambier, and Anvil Islands. Here's a view from Whitecliff looking out over White Islet. I have fond memories scrambling up the steep cliffs and then making sure to get back to the mainland before the high tide came in and covered the rocks connecting the island to the shore. Looking out over Whitecliff Beach, a wonderfully serene beach to enjoy on a summer's morning before the park goers arrive. And this is the same beach, Whitecliff Beach, at dusk in the fall as the cooler weather sets in. Here's the view looking down over the waters of Bachelor Bay, just east of Whitecliff, and Bachelor Bay Beach. Because it faces south, this beach is a sun trap and as such is a popular swimming spot. My love of the great outdoors extended to my choice of career, operating a dog walking company. Here I am with a group of dogs on a dog beach at Ambleside. Another favorite walk of mine is along the Capilina River, here walking through the crunchy fall leaves. The Japanese have developed the practice of forest bathing, where one immerses themselves in nature and reaps many health benefits, and I definitely feel the therapeutic effects when I'm surrounded by trees. Being in such close connection with nature, I love and appreciate its pristine beauty, but also notice the inevitable degradation that occurs as a result of human activity. Because I'm outside every day for my work and recreation, I'm acutely aware of the environment around me. West Vancouver is not the sleepy cottage community it once was. Industry and development is encroaching, and with that comes an inevitable increase in pollution. Marine litter has become a global crisis, and our area of the world is not immune. I became concerned with the amount of garbage I would see on our local beaches, so I joined the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, collecting debris from Copper Cove. As an adult, my innocent relationship to nature was changing, as I became more aware of the pollution problem that was becoming more invasive. More often, on my nature walks, I would be breathing in polluted air instead of the clean, fresh air I was used to. I began to educate myself on the environmental issues plaguing us. In my research, I learned that many other countries include the right to a healthy environment in their constitutions, but Canada does not. In 2015, I joined a David Suzuki initiative called the Blue Dot Movement. The initial campaign was to lobby municipal governments to enact environmental declarations. The ultimate goal is to achieve constitutional change at the federal level to include the right of all citizens to breathe fresh air, drink clean water, and eat safe food. Here in West Van, a loyal group of Blue Dot volunteers worked tirelessly to collect signatures and draw attention to the importance of environmental rights. This was our local group celebrating a Blue Dot National Day of Action in 2015. In July of 2015, I'm proud to say that our West Van Council unanimously passed the motion to sign a municipal environmental declaration supporting the rights of citizens to live in a healthy community. To date, over 170 other municipalities across Canada have signed similar environmental declarations. In enacting an environmental declaration, West Vancouver made an important commitment to protecting the people who live here and an acknowledgement that people are part of the environment and that a healthy environment is inextricably linked to the well-being of our community. For me personally, this declaration is a significant validation of what I've felt my whole life, and I'm so proud to be part of a community that realizes the benefits of nature and is willing to defend the right to live in a healthy environment. The current Blue Dot focus is a campaign to encourage all MP candidates to include the right to a healthy environment in their upcoming federal election campaigns. Here in West Van, I've met with our local MP who has happily pledged her support and has advocated on our behalf. The Blue Dot movement is hopeful that the federal government will eventually enact a federal environmental bill of rights, and that what should be the most basic of human rights, the right to live in a healthy environment, will be recognized and protected for generations to come. For more information about the Blue Dot movement and the right to a healthy environment, we have a local Facebook page, North Shore Blue Dot, or you can check out the Blue Dot website at bluedot.ca. There are informational cards at the back of the room that you may take. And may I recommend reading the book, The Right to a Healthy Environment, Revitalizing Canada's Constitution by David R. Boyd, which was very inspirational for me in my quest for answers about how to best protect the people and places I love. And in the meantime, I'll continue to hug trees in my wild West Vancouver. Thank you.